Hi all, and welcome to Monday night's All Meta Mode podcast with Gypsy and myself, Amanda Digger, Diggaz. So before we get started with tonight's show, just a couple of reminders. Dirt Digest Magazine has its February issue out. Go to dirtdigestmagazine.com and you can click on, actually right when you go to dirtdigestmagazine.com, the current issue comes up. I know that Mike is always looking for submissions, so if you have any treasure you found recently that you'd like to share or have shared with everyone, give Mike an email, and I think that's m.hair@allmetalmode.com. If that's not correct, you can definitely find him on Facebook under Mike Hair. And yeah, so just put a little bit of information about what it is that you found and where you might have found it and what type of machine you were using and when you found it. And send that on over and you can be shown in the March issue. All right, so next up is allmetamode.com. So Joanna Lesnica has a new article called The Ideal Metal Detecting Shovel for Rocky Ground. Really great article and definitely worth a read. So if you haven't, go check out allmetalmode.com and that article is there. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. So I figured maybe you might all enjoy it as well. We do have a special guest tonight. We have Anthony Kowalchick, the Oaklanddigger. So hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly, Anthony, and we'll be bringing him on in a little bit. So before we get really going, hey Gypsy, how are you tonight?
I'm fabulous. How about you?
I am doing well. The snow has stopped for the time being until tomorrow morning. So
tomorrow morning.
Yes. But
so the big question is, have you been able to get out while it's been all this snow and stuff?
I did. I got out on Saturday. I believe it was 35 degrees. It was sunny. It only seemed a little breezy. And I'm like, you know what? I'm throwing my thermals on. I didn't grab my detector because we had just gotten a bunch of snow and it had been really, really cold. I thought about going to the forest and instead I was like, you know what? The tide worked out perfect, that it was midday, and I took a ride to that rocky treasure beach I like to visit, and managed to find some cool stuff.
I thought I saw a post, and I wasn't for sure if it was recent or not. So, what did you find?
So I
Anything
found.
You want to share?
Yeah, nothing really super old. I did find a 1942 Whitehall Tatum number 3 insulator, which is really cool. Looks a lot like one that I found last year, but it's a different brand, I guess, different maker. I found I think it's a welding lens. Somebody said maybe a train light of some sort. It's like an olive green lens. I found a couple little mini bottles I didn't get pictures of because my hands got wet and then they got cold. And
right.
A couple buttons and pipe stem fragments. And I did spot a coin and I'm like, yay! It only turned out to be a weedy though, so.
Yeah. I always get that slight disappointment, when it turns out to be a weedy. And me too. I got out yesterday, and I got to go to a dump that I've dug out a few times, and I met up with 2 of my friends, and anyway, long story short, I ended up with 3 coins out of the dump, and one was an Indian. I don't know what the date is yet. One was a weedy, and another one is a nickel, and I'm not sure. It is so slick. I finally got it cleaned off. I thought it was a token at first. I soaked it in some CLR and got the crust off, but it's so slick. I think it possibly might be a shield nickel. if it's not a shield nickel, I think it's a V nickel. But I'm still not for sure. But I thought I saw a faint shield on the back. But anyway, maybe I'm wishful thinking too much. But it's in bad shape anyway. So
that's awesome, though.
But I ended up with like 4 clay marbles and 2 regular other type marbles and some really cool bottles. And then the friends I was with, Cinder, she found my favorite find. She found a 1905 New York chauffeur badge.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. And we looked it up, and we found one for sale online was like $675. Like, whoa. Of course, hers isn't in great shape because it's been in the dump, probably burned a little, even charred a little, and all kinds of stuff. So it's looking kind of rough, but I mean, it's still probably worth at least $250, my guess. But if I was her, I would sell it anyway, and I don't think she would. It's just a really cool find. And anyway, that's pretty much. Oh, and I got a shoe buckle that you would love.
Ooh.
So anyway, I was excited about that.
Very cool.
That's about it. So maybe we should bring in our guest now. What do you say?
Absolutely.
Awesome. You want to introduce him?
Sure. Anthony and Mr. Oaklanddigger, welcome to the show.
Hi, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. I know our listeners probably get tired of our same-o sounding dance sometimes. So it's always nice to have someone new on the show that we haven't ever had, and we appreciate you being here. And if you don't mind, go ahead, Anthony, kind of give us a little bit of info about you, tell us where you're from and maybe how long you've been metal detecting. Let's start with that.
All right, well, I've been metal detecting for 13 years now. I started basically full-time metal detecting, I'd say like 2009. I live in Michigan, close to Oakland County. I grew up in Oakland County, so that's why I'm Oaklanddigger. And I've been, big history buff and everything for years, ever since I was really, really young. And I'm even the vice president of my local historical society now.
Oh, wow.
How did you get into metal detecting?
So when I was really, really little, I did get a metal detector as a gift. I couldn't tell you what it was or anything, but that really didn't get me hooked. That was probably like somewhere in 1999 or so, and I really didn't get into the hobby then. But back in 2009, my great uncle passed away, and when he passed away, he had a Garrett Treasure Ace 100 I found in his basement. So I borrowed that from him after obviously he passed, and I started using that and got hooked. I ended up digging my great-great-uncle's World War I military bracelet in his front yard, and nobody knew that he had lost it. So that got me like really, really hooked on the hobby. I ended up buying a Fisher F4 and then just started going crazy from then and digging nonstop.
Wow. Yeah, once you find that really cool item, it sure can hook you on the hobby, and it just snowballs from there, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, that's what really pulled me into the hobby. And then I started doing a bunch of research in my local history, finding a bunch of locations to go, and one thing led to another, and I got in contact with the Historical Society and then became a member, and now I'm vice president. So it always leads to something.
Definitely. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe how you got involved with the Historical Society? I'm always interested because I've tried to contact some of my local historical societies. I've been with one in the past, but I moved from that area, so I'm always curious.
Yeah, so basically I was trying to track down some of the old cellar holes and stuff, and I'd done a lot of research on my local parks. And in doing so, I ended up contacting them to try to get some more information. And once I had told them what I'd already had researched and, found and discovered, they were like really, really intrigued with what I knew. So at that time, I think I was like 15 years old. So they were like
Wow.
super shocked. This young guy was like super into history and knew all this stuff. So they were trying to get me to join badly. At the same time, our local parks in that township did not allow metal detecting. And I didn't know that. There's nothing posted online saying they didn't allow it. So ended up the Oakland County police had stopped me and told me to leave at the parks there, saying it was illegal. And I had looked online and looked at the township stuff, and there was nothing posted. So I ended up approaching the Historical Society and then approaching the Parks and Rec department to complain about it. I even went to a board meeting to try to fight it. But, that kind of got my foot in the door and got a lot of people into, knowing who I was and then joining the group and, getting highly involved. And then a lot of my fines, I started getting, too many fines, is obviously what all of us get when you start metal detecting. So I started making display cases and donating them to the Historical Society with pictures of every home I detected. And now they're all in their museum there, and they do a rotating display of them at the local cider mill almost every single year. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah. I think by doing that with your fines is always a great way to get your foot in the door. A part of a club that I used to be a part of, that I'd helped start the club. That's how we kind of got our foot in the door, as we kind of became friends with a local historian that was a board member of the local Historical Society. And we donated some fines, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So I'm always interested in how people get that started and get into that. I know Amanda has a few more questions. I'll try not to talk too much. Go ahead, Amanda.
Well, so I figure we've got plenty of time. So let's kind of go to the path of the GIS and the map reading and whatnot. How did you really find this, those type of avenues for the researching? Like, what led you to getting into the map and overlaying and the GIS and
everything? Well, so how that all happened, so I started off like most metal detectorists and started overlaying the old maps onto Google Earth and placing them down. And I was probably like 16 years old when I started doing this, and I found it like really, really enjoyable. And I'm dyslexic, so I usually don't like doing research. I don't like reading. I don't like doing any of that sort of stuff. So maps to me was easy to work with, easy to figure that stuff out. And I had like really, really enjoyed overlaying and finding home locations and stuff that way. And my dad ended up finding GIS as a career path online and showed it to me. And then I found Central Michigan University here had the degree for it. So I went and pursued that. So now I graduated back in 2016. So I'm a GIS specialist now. So basically what GIS is, if you guys don't know what that is, it's Geographic Information Systems. So it's basically mapping using Google Earth or any other thing into like a physical, like, it's tough to explain. It's basically like Google Earth to most people who don't use it all the time. So we make all the GPS softwares, all the self-driving vehicles use all GIS to operate it. Everything basically around us is operating almost on GIS nowadays. So a lot of the counties and everything around here have their own GIS systems. So what I started doing when I got into GIS and discovered GIS is I started using GIS to help me metal detect. So a lot of the counties and stuff around here have been starting to upload all their old aerial photos into their GIS system. So if you search a county and then GIS, you should be able to find all your property lines for their county. You should be able to find all the aerial photos. My local county goes back all the way to 1940 in the aerial photos. All sorts of data, flood data, all sorts of stuff you can find on there. And then other websites from there, started coming out and making their own GIS maps. There's even colleges and universities that have started producing Civil War GIS maps and tracing troop movements throughout the country. I know Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, has got a very big Civil War GIS map system that I've seen out there that that shows troop movements and everything through the whole state. It's really, really helpful to track that sort of stuff if you want to follow people to metal detect those sites. So it's been very fascinating and cool. Not many people know about it, and it's helped me discover a lot of my sites over the years, even stuff that nobody would ever think of looking at.
Now, I've got a quick question for you. Is there something for a lot of us are on the go a lot, and we use our cell phones now, our smartphones, when we're out detecting to look at maps and things like that. Is there any kind of special app that you recommend for that?
So I still use these historic MapWorks and historic aerials like everybody else. There's a website I joined, and anybody can join it. It's called ACRC Value. So what this website does tells you the property values of farms, the property boundaries, who owns the farm, how many acres it is, all that stuff. I'll place a link for it here in chat. Okay. And basically, it can find any property throughout the whole 48. Even I have not looked at Alaska and Hawaii, but I'm guessing they're probably in there too. Even some of Canada, you can find the property lines and everything there to find farm values, and it tells you who owns it. I don't pay for the website, but if you pay, they might even give you the phone numbers to some of the property owners and stuff. I use this website to locate township-owned properties that are not listed anywhere. I found parks that townships own that really, they're not labeled well. And I've dug a lot of barber dimes and Indian head pennies and Canadian large cents out of those parks because nobody knew they existed. So, yeah.
Very neat. So I wrote that link down for myself, but any of you can always go back and to the archive and click on that link, can't they, Amanda?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
if anyone's listening in Apple Podcast or any of the other streaming venues that kind of play all metal mode, you can go to Spreaker.com and actually go to all metal mode and then click on the show, and it will bring you to an area which you click on chat. So right now, if you are listening, and I'm not sure if any of you might be. I'm not sure if chat is an option if you're listening through Apple. If you're in chat and you use that, definitely let us know. But if you're not in chat and you didn't realize that we actually had a live chat, that's where you'd want to go. And then definitely if you're listening in the future from now, hi, future people, you can go to Spreaker.com, chat, and go and find the link.
I'll also post maybe after this inside All Metal Mode's Facebook page and put some of these links. I mean, I have a few more as well. I have a link that I've discovered through the Bureau of Land Management page that can get you the extremely early maps, the first ever maps created for most any of the townships. Like I pulled the 1817 map of my township up through that website. Most of that's just the land surveying stuff, but it shows you all the Native American trails, some of the original Native American settlements in those maps, the original locations of creeks, lakes, swamps, which a lot of that was filled in immediately after the survey was done so farmers could get in there. So it's really, really helpful to see the original landscape on some of those old surveys and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely. Wow. That's neat that it even shows the Native American trails. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and then you can track, because the original settlers had to walk up those Native American trails even to get to their first sites. So a lot of those show up. The only thing it doesn't show in those, some of them they do show squatters, because there was people who illegally, stayed on the government land before they bought it. So a few of the maps do have home sites for squatters, but not many of them, because that was quite rare and people didn't want to get busted for it. So.
Wow. Too bad they don't show you the squatters from today. I mean, these days, yesterday, the dump site we were digging on, we got there and there were like 4 or 5 homeless sites. It's really sad, but right there at this old dump, too bad that these maps don't show you the modern squatters.
No, they don't.
Oh, boy.
I've ran into a few of those out in the middle of nowhere, too.
Amanda, you have some more questions for me? Sorry.
Yes. So you said you were using the historic map works. Now I know that those are linked into the Sanborn fire maps. Do you look at those as well to see, now I'm getting ahead of myself. I was going to say, have you done any privy digging when you look up, because I know on the Sanborn fire maps you can see where the privies were at some of these old home sites?
Yeah, I've done privy digging, but a lot of the Sanborn fire maps in this area are mostly just villages and towns. And my township, they don't have a full Sanborn fire map for because there was no water mains located in there. So the places I've done have been outside the villages and towns, so I haven't found any of that sort of stuff. But those Sanborn fire maps are very, very helpful. I mean, and they're accurate. Unlike some of the stuff on historicmapworks.com, there's a lot of things that aren't really 100% accurate. And I know Mike had done another podcast back in 2019 trying to figure out why he could not find one of those sites in that Ohio field. And that's why I had originally reached out to him, because I was explaining to him why that doesn't exist. And I can go into that if you guys would like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We would love to know more about that for sure.
Because, Mike definitely did bring it up. So it's very fascinating. So.
It is. So a lot of those early atlases, if they're not signed by like a surveyor or done by the government when it's legally signed, then that means that a lot of those early atlases, people were scared that they were going to get copyrighted, because copywriting did not exist back then. So everybody thought their maps were going to get copied. So they put fake stuff in the maps to prevent them from being copied, because if they did get copied, then they could sue the other map company for, copying the fake stuff, and that's how they knew what it was. So my local county, Oakland County, we have a fake railroad. I believe it's the M&M Railroad that shows up on the map. So it's been the biggest joke in our historical society is we always, tell people, the M&M Railroad cut through our county, but it never was there, and we've had people put fake railroad ties out by it and stuff like that. But there's a bunch of fake home sites on maps too. I've found a few that you don't find a single thing. Either it was completely made out of wood, which, that is a possibility. You have a home site that, has no metal at all. But if it doesn't have a single object, it's probably, a fake house. And if you look at the terrain around it, I mean, if there's a house that shows up in a swampy location, odds are that's not a real house. They would never build a house in a swampy location. So those are basically fake objects. So you could have fake roads, you could have fake railroads, you could have fake homes. And then the most famous stuff is paper towns, which a lot of map makers set up fake towns all across the country to, catch copywriters and copy stuff. There's several famous cases. There's one in New York. I think it's Alger. I think it's the name of the town. Don't count me on that. They ended up putting that fake town on a map in 1937. And in the 1950s, somebody came along and seeing the map so many times with that name on it that they ended up establishing the town itself. So you think the town is much older than what it is, but it's not. It's pretty new. And that supposedly has happened in a few cases, even out west and things like that. So you never know. I mean, there's a lot of random things like that throughout the whole entire country. And you just got to do a lot of detective work to try to figure out what's real and what isn't. And then you also have the other cases where surveyors end up platting a town and creating a town on paper that they thought they were going to establish. Like there's one over here in Macomb Township, Michigan, at Tilch Road and 21 Mile. I can't think of the name of the town right now, but that town was platted and designed. You can pull up all the plats for it in 1837, but not a single home was built, not a single road was installed. So you're not going to find anything there, but maybe some survey irons when they tried to survey the town. But that's about it. So it's fascinating. There's a lot of fake stuff out there. You got to dig through and try to figure out, if you use those old atlases, what's real and what isn't. So.
Wow.
It's very clever.
It is.
I was saying it's pretty clever of them to do that, so that to see if, they were being copywritten, and it's just, it's crazy.
I mean, it's actually caused such a big problem today. I know there was a famous case with Google Maps in England where they actually somehow got a paper town from one of these old maps over in England, and they put it in Google Maps. And people were going to it, and it was just a farm field in the middle of nowhere there was never a town there. And I know Google had a huge problem with and ended up having to remove the fake town. But it's funny that people are still falling for them, and these big map companies like Google and stuff are still falling for the traps here and there with those fake towns.
That's crazy. I had a friend that told me once that he was researching trying to find where, how a lot of towns they'll start and in one location in the older part of the town, and then they'll add on to the town, and somehow the old part of the town had I don't know if it had burned or what, and he was trying to locate it for, metal detecting. And he found the historical marker at the edge of this property, and he got permission to go metal detect that property and didn't find, anything, no traces of a town. So upon further research, he found out that the historical marker was placed in the wrong place. So I'm just curious if that ever happens on maps too. Or if that could have even been why they placed that historical marker there. Maybe they had it wrong on the map.
Well, they could also move the historical marker for other reasons. So I'm working on an historic marker actually right now for one of my site locations that I've been metal detecting for years. It's been in the works for about 3 years now. So it's supposed to be approved here by the state on February 11th. So hopefully that will go through. But the site marker is going to be just a little bit away from the site. They do a lot of weddings at this location, so they wanted to move the marker out of the way so it's not in a bunch of people's wedding shots for where the true place is. So, I mean, there's other reasons why markers are moved like that. I mean, we know the exact location, but since there's things like that, they're moving it. Like some of the Civil War battle sites and stuff, they might have records saying that a Confederate could be buried in such and such location, and you don't want to put the historic marker post because those things have to go deep in the ground through a body. So,
right.
They might move it off the battlefield for that reason just a little bit, just to keep it away from not having that issue, because you don't want to do that.
Gotcha. Wow. Fascinating stuff.
So on any of these, do you personally use LiDAR or any of like that type? I know on the phone there is a program which is ARC, A-R-C, GIS or GIS, G-I-S, which has LiDAR for different locations. Do you use that at all when you're doing your research or when you're out in the field?
I do it for work I haven't done it much when I'm out in the field. The only reason is because here in Michigan, we have a lot of Michigan basements, if you guys know what that is. So what Michigan basements are is you get a cellar hole that was basically a crawl space that the people later on went back and dug it out. And when they dug it out, they moved all the dirt somewhere else, and then they filled that section that they dug out with concrete. So if the house gets demolished or removed, that upper layer of rock and debris that was around the concrete part usually falls in and collapses into the cellar hole. So most of the cellar holes I find are just huge piles of rocks in the center. So the LiDAR really doesn't work too well for me because it's tougher to see that because it's kind of already collapsed in itself. I use a lot of infrared images to find my stuff. I look at a lot of the infrared photos, which is a lot of available on a lot of counties' GIS systems. You can find anything that's not living super easily on that. I mean, cellar holes stand out pretty well. There'll be big blue squares. Cars, there's cars abandoned in the woods. I've found plenty of them through using infrared photos, and that's a good lead to get to dumps if you spot the car from the infrared photo. Things like that. I've mostly used infrared. I've even used it in northern Michigan. I kind of looked at the tree lines through the infrared and was able to find an old logging road, and I got to an 1880s logging camp way up in the upper part of the lower peninsula, and ended up digging a bunch of saw pieces and even old cast iron stoves they would have used to heat the log cabin there, and a nice little whiskey flask. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Wow. So you've been able to locate some old dumps this way too, using the infrared? Is that what you said?
Yeah, if there's something large in the dump, like I have a couple of dumps that are next to a mill, and for some reason, like the grain apparatus to the mill is laying in the dump, so it's this giant, big, square grain apparatus that they would have used to either dump in the railroad cars or something like that, and that stood out big on the aerial photos. Like big objects that can get you closer to those dumps, if they're large, you can usually see them on the infrared photos pretty well. Cars especially. I can post a couple examples in the All Metal Mode Facebook page of spotting cars using infrared. They stand out pretty well.
Yeah, if you get a chance to, besides on here, if you could post some of that stuff on the All Metal Mode Facebook group, we would love that. Share that with us, and if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind sharing some of it on my Zero Discrimination Facebook group.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Awesome. I find this all fascinating. I'm just now, I've been metal detecting 22 plus years now, and it's funny. I use Google, Google Maps and a little, and I'm just now getting into the Sanborn maps and stuff, but I've never been one for, I'm directionally challenged. I've never been one for reading maps very well. So for me, if I do look at a map, I have to usually have a visual, because I'm a very visual person. I have to have a big landmark, that I can find something, because I'm really bad at remembering names too of roads and streets and such. So most of my properties and stuff that I've done any research, mine usually begins more from the historical, and the last thing I look at is a map, if I even look at a map. So I'm really bad at that. So this is all great for me for learning more about, how to use these maps and how to access these maps on the internet. I'm amazed at just the apps available now on your phone, besides the GPS that I can use to get me anywhere. I don't know how I ever got anywhere in the past without my phone anymore, my GPS on my phone, but I really am so directionally challenged. So, and to be able to look on, aerial maps and stuff and locate, like yesterday, getting to this dump, we were just trying to find a place to park the vehicles. So we had to look on some aerial maps to be able to find a little road that goes down to by this creek and all this, just so we weren't parking in a really bad area. So anyway.
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Gypsy.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask, is there any more things that you'd like to share with us about this, or some of your experiences with the maps or researching, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so there is a couple other things. So I know a lot of people research basically just using their county or township or city names basically to find these old maps. But the main trick is basically you want to find your township and range numbers. That's how you can find a lot of the very, very old stuff, is using the township and range maps. So to find your township and range number, it usually says it at the top of those old atlases. Or you can search it, you could ask the county what it is. So each one has a baseline and meridian separating most of these states, and all these townships were surveyed off those baselines and meridians. And if you search by township and range, you can find a lot of the old maps that way. So that's how you get the original surveys and stuff like that. And the other thing that I found using the township and range number, especially for my county, is called rural property inventories, which were done in the 1930s. And those things are a godsend.
I'll have to check those out. I haven't heard of that one before.
Yeah, what those were, they went in the 1930s, right after the Depression hit, and they started inventorying a ton of farms throughout the whole entire country to see who survived and who didn't. And they're little, like, index cards. There's 2 per each farmstead. And they will list in those farmsteads all the crops they're growing, what fields they're growing those certain crops, what buildings are on the property, what year every single building was built based from the homeowner. So if the chicken coop was built in 1890, but the barn was built in 1850, it will tell you that. And then the second card shows the homestead, and it goes through every single floor of the homestead, which is really cool. So it tells you what the wood floors are made out of. Does it have electricity? Does it have gas? Does it have water? Is it on well? Is it on septic? So it's a lot of my cellar holes. I've used those index cards. One of the homes that I've been detecting for years, the house is somewhat still there. It's fallen over and it's laying on its side. But the 1936 rural index card listed the house as abandoned for about 15 years in 1936. And then it had no power, no electricity, no gas, all fire and candle lit, which was really cool to see. Like, okay, so, this thing was still standing in 1936, but it had been abandoned for 15 years, and the date of the house was 1860 that it was built. So it's kind of cool to have all that information going to it, even though nobody had lived in that house in almost 100 years now. So.
That's crazy. So I do see in chat a lot of people are saying that they do overlaying of old maps with today's maps. Is that something you do as well?
I do. Yeah, I do that. I think we lost Gypsy, Amanda. But, yeah, I do that a lot. I do a lot of that overlaying and get it, try to line it up as much as possible. If you do it with the Township and Range section numbers, it's the easiest way to do it. If you do it by the four corners of every single section. Don't do it by roads. Don't do it by rivers, because all that stuff can be moved or faked on a map. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's not something I've kind of done, but not really. I've actually looked at where our own river is, and then looked at, that, and then basically, I did not hang up on her now. Stop that. And then just checked it out. One of the big things that we do in the spring and the fall, when most of the overgrowth is gone, is actually, go scope the different areas and see what we can see. And, we do have the indented cellar holes. You have the wells, the stone walls. So a lot of that can lead you to, the locations that you're technically looking for. At least we're fortunate enough up here to have that. I don't know. I'm not sure if do you have stone walls and everything? This might be an absolutely silly question. In Michigan,
we do, but they're a little different than the New England ones. A lot of them are just beat up field stone and they're not built as neatly as they are out there in New England. So, I can follow them and maybe find something, but I've never really had luck doing that in Michigan. I'd love to get out there to New England. That's still on my list to do. I've only detected in Indiana and Florida besides Michigan. So I need to get out over to you guys and dig over there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to go up to Maine, where Amanda lives, because down here in the South Texas area, now some of the history does date back to the Spanish explorers, but it's just far and few between, and a lot of those sites are protected. So we're talking the earliest near me is 1850s, and it's just small settlements, and then so we don't have that good New England area where it's 1700s, cellar holes and all that.
Oh yeah, we're kind of the same up here. I am too. They have a lot more older relics. There's a lot of older relics you still can find in Michigan. We had French settlements here back in the early 1600s, but it's still not like you're pulling them constantly like you are over there in New England. Majority of the coppers in large sense I find here are all Canadian, because Detroit's the busiest border crossing between Canada. So there's so many Canadian coins over here. It's ridiculous.
We do.
Yeah.
We have them here as well. Actually, I was kind of shocked the first time I found one, thinking it was a large cent, a Canadian large cent. And I'm like, what? They had them too? And, they ring up obviously different than ours. But then it's like, light bulb, wait, Canada's really not that far away. And then learning about, they came down for work, and, putting the pieces together. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
That was the first find I found when the time I met Amanda. Flew up to New York and was hoping to find my first large cent because we just don't find them down here, and ended up with a Canadian coin, my first coin up there. Still didn't find my large cent. So.
Next time.
I still haven't either in my 13 years. I mean, I know they're all over the place here. I've hunted with plenty of people here in Michigan that have found them with me, and every time I dig a large cent, it's Canadian. And it's been just haunting me for years. I mean, I've gotten so many 1880 and 1870s Canadian Victoria large cents, and no U.S. one yet. I even got the 1857 Flying Eagle cent, which is my dream coin. I love that coin. But I still have never crossed that threshold to get to the large U.S. copper.
Well, I know Dee, she's from Michigan, and she's in chat tonight. And I know that she travels quite often to Ohio, where we have a lot of our listeners in chat that are from Ohio area, and where Mike is originally from. And a lot of them just travel, down to Ohio to find their large cents. And I recently went to Ohio and still didn't find my large cent, which Mike promised me, by the way. Didn't happen.
Yeah, I might have a site to hit in Ohio this summer. I just found out one of my neighbors actually owns a huge plot of land down there in southeast Ohio. So I might be hitting that up this spring or fall, hopefully to find something there. So we'll see.
Yeah, and one of the Bills in chat, he says, y'all stay out of Ohio.
Yeah, they don't like Michiganders. Yeah, with the old Toledo Strip. We're still arguing over that. And technically, by the way, if you want to look up old maps and data of Ohio, the whole Toledo Strip is actually surveyed under Michigan. So if you want to get the really, really old information on the Toledo Strip, you have to look at Michigan. You can't look at Ohio. That's a little trick there that most people don't realize, because it was part of Michigan.
Wow. Well, Anthony, do you mind telling us what is one of your all-time favorite finds? Do you have one?
Ooh, that's tough. I got two relics that I absolutely love. The first one, so I bought this house a few years ago, and it's built in 1914. And I dug in my front yard a 1914 motorcycle license plate. And it's the last year Michigan made a porcelain and metal license plate. So it's like in really, really nice condition. So that just shocked me that I got a license plate exactly the same year as my house, which maybe was the original owner to this house, which is the coolest thing. So that's one of my favorite things. But I'd have to say probably my best find, and a shocker to me that I still can't believe I found in Michigan, is I found a Purple Heart to a Nazi soldier.
Whoa.
Yep.
Wow. I'd love to see photos of that. So maybe either in all metal mode or Zero Discrimination my Facebook group. If you want to share, I'd love to see them.
Yeah, I'll post that on there. It's about the size of one of the US or CS belt buckles. That was a screamer in the middle of the woods.
Wow.
And basically how I found that location was I was talking to an old timer, and he told me where they used to illegally drink back in Prohibition. And I followed the lead back to this location. There was no homes ever there, anything like that. And ended up finding that back there along with all the Hutchins and old beer bottles from their illegal Prohibition drinking days, which I'm still digging that dump out. But that just shocked me, because all the bottles out there are much older than that Nazi Purple Heart, and I still to this day have no clue how that Purple Heart ended up back there with all that other stuff. Because, yeah, it has to have some crazy story.
Yeah, there's got to be a crazy story attached to that. Well,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would really, really love to see it. What detector were you using at that time? Do you remember when you found that?
When I found that, I was jumping between two detectors, which I was doing until this past year. So I originally had the Garrett Ace 100. Then I went to the Fisher F4, and then from there I inherited a White's XLT. So I used the White's XLT for a super long time. And then when the Garrett AT Pro came out, I bought that. So then I was jumping constantly between the Garrett AT Pro and the White's XLT. But just recently, my White's XLT is now having some sort of issue. I don't know. I'm going to have to somehow get it repaired. It's just you try to swing with it, and it just starts shutting off on itself. So I can't really even use it because the screen just shuts off. So
that's
basically, I'm just with the AT Pro now.
That's one of my machines. So if you want to reach out to me after, I can tell you who to chat with about it, and I might have a way to fix it as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's a great machine. I mean, that's how I found most of my deep Indian heads. I programmed it with a deep detecting mode, and I pulled so many Indian head pennies 6 inches or deeper, and I've had plenty of homeowners tell me, oh, this was detected in the 1970s. You're not going to find anything here, and I'm still pulling all these deeper coins out of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, James put it in chat, but I can send you the link and everything. Bob at Centerville Electronics was with White's, and he works on all White's machines and whatnot, so he can definitely help too.
Yeah, I see that in there. I'll definitely have to get on that and get it fixed.
Then, yeah, Keith Wills does as well. He works on on just about every machine.
Just about, yeah, about everyone, every brand.
But that's awesome, though. Is that the picture that you sent that's in the actual advertisement?
Yes, that's the Nazi Purple Heart is one of them there. Yeah, that big picture in the side over there, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also on my Instagram, Oaklanddigger page. You can see it there, along with, there was a couple, there was one 1952 quarter with it and a couple 1950s wheat pennies. So somebody was there in the 50s.
Nice. And is that how people can find you? On Instagram as Oaklanddigger, and then anywhere else?
Yeah, I do have an old YouTube channel. I haven't used it in years, since 2014. You can go on and check that out. I eventually might get back to it. My hunting partner, Michigan Relic Hunters, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He and I have been hunting a lot, and we're hoping to maybe start filming some videos here soon and maybe doing some stuff again. He's got some amazing spots. He found a button dump similar to what you guys had hunted over there in New England that you guys were talking about. So we've been hitting that up a lot. He just actually had one of his finds shared by Garrett because he found a Revolutionary War button there, which was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
That's incredible.
You never know what you're going to get. I mean, that's the whole fun of the hobby. And I never thought I'd find a Nazi Purple Heart in Michigan.
Right. So I'm curious, your button dump that you've located, did y'all use were you using maps to help locate that? Or if you don't mind me asking?
No, he stumbled across it. He'll have to, you guys may be able to reach out to him sometime. He was the one who discovered it and just brought me to it.
Okay.
He's got an interesting story of how he found that. I think he found it when he was over in this location going to school, and that's how he discovered it. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Very neat. Yeah. As you probably heard, Amanda and I have been itching to get back to that button dump. And that's another thing that I would like to do is do a little more research and start locating more of those type of dumps and see if there's any in the Texas area. I doubt, but it sure would be nice to locate.
You never know.
Areas. You never know. You never know.
I mean, we've located about 2 of those locations. The other one it's a little rough. You can't really find much there because they relocated the river in the town. So they backfilled the old river, which backfilled everything that was in the river, which would have been where the button dump was located. So that one was kind of just...
no.
Yeah, it was not a good shot there.
Wow. I've never heard of them backfilling a river. So the town relocated it?
It's quite common. That town was Rochester, Michigan. They backfilled the river there in one of the locations, rerouted it. And up north, it happened a lot up there for logging reasons. They rerouted a lot of rivers in northern Michigan. So, yeah.
How would one go about finding out how they, if they backfilled a river like that? Would you be able to tell that from maps, like a river is no longer existing, existed on an older map, and then a more current map, you may see it totally rerouted?
Yeah, you can. Some of them, and a lot of them, if they do that, they have some very recorded documents on it because it takes a lot of engineering to do that. So you can usually find some sort of engineering document based on it. I mean, I found a lot of engineering documents and river reroutings and road reconstructions and constructions from the 1830s even. I even found in the township I was working for as an intern, I even found the 1874 railroad engineering plans for the railroad that cut through my township. So there's all those sorts of documents out there. You just got to dig through them, and most people in the government don't even know what they have buried deep in their map archives and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, take note of what we didn't discuss tonight, because this has been a very interesting subject, and we've got a lot of people that are dropping off for another show that comes on tonight after this one. But we would love to have you back on and maybe take note of what you kind of want to talk about next time and share, and we would love to hear from you some more. And by the way, Mike just joined chat. I don't know if he's been listening on the whole thing, but he says hello.
I see him in there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again, Anthony, for joining us tonight. We appreciate you and look forward to having you on again.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to come back on again.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening tonight, and you all have a wonderful night, and we'll see you on the next.
Good night, all.
Good night.